welcome to Dead Man Talking. Tonight's story is a short but absolutely spine-tingling tale from the incredible mind of SirDimmaDome over on Reddit No Sleep. Of course, as ever, please do let us know what you thought down below in the comments box. Please do like and share. It really does help build the channel and our community further. And why not hashtag TeamFEAR and DMT's Cryptid crew. And so, with that aside, let's get into tonight's story. Entitled, I was saved from a Skinwalker. Let's get straight into that. For about a year and a half, I, a 22-year-old male, dated my ex, 23-year-old male, who was Native American, specifically Navajo. Our relationship got serious enough that we introduced each other to our parents. He and his family lived close to our college, so I would go over there quite frequently for dinner or just to visit. And during spring break, his parents invited me to come with them to a log cabin they had and their extended family had rented for a weekend. I accepted and honestly got kind of excited, as I felt like my boyfriend and I were moving up in our relationship. I also could count the number of family vacations I had taken growing up on one hand, so there was that. On the night before we drove to the cabin, my boyfriend's parents invited me over for dinner, and after they sat me down to talk to me about the next couple of days. I already knew my boyfriend's grandparents were extremely in touch with Navajo traditions, and could be harsh to certain people they saw as outsiders. They basically explained that they may not accept me immediately, and that they apologized if at any point they had offended me. I thought about what they said the entire drive to the cabin and honestly only made me even more nervous the closer we got to our destination. Meeting my boyfriend's family for the first time was stressful enough, but adding on the fact that we were the same gender and that his family may view me as an outsider, it made my chest unbearably tight. As we drove to the cabin, immediately we saw that there was a group standing outside of it. My boyfriend's dad parked the car, and he and his wife jumped out to run over to the crowd to see what the issue was. The yelling was loud, and you could hear it almost clearly, despite us all still being in the car. I asked my boyfriend who the people were, and he said they were all of different family members, and that a serious argument must have broken out. We got out of the car and walked around to the front of it so we could see what was going on. It looked like about 9 people yelling at one guy. The guy had his back to us, but I remembered his bizarre way of standing. It's hard to describe, but if I had to give a comparison, it would be Mr. Crocker from Fairly Odd Parents. The argument was so heated that it looked like nearly everyone was ready to start throwing punches. And finally, the guy with his back to us yelled something before turning and walking in our direction. I thought he was walking directly towards us, but then I realized he was on a path to walking past us. As he walked by me, I remember he looked at me really quick and we made eye contact. His hair was long and shaggy and came down over his face, but I could still see his eyes, and they looked immensely glazed over, like the guy was beyond high. Despite nothing technically being off about him, it just felt like I had looked into the eyes of a mannequin or something. Getting over my uneasiness, I noticed the guy hadn't walked to the car, but instead he continued to walk until we walked into the woods. I turned to my boyfriend and asked where he was going and who that was, and he said that he was pretty sure it was one of his uncles, but he hadn't seen him since he was a kid. We both assumed the guy had maybe went to blow off some steam or walk off a high. My boyfriend's parents came back and said everything was fine now, and that we could take our bags out of the car and head on inside. A log cabin, it was honestly an understatement. The house they had rented out for the weekend, it was massive. It had enough rooms where everyone's personal family had their own rooms. I was beyond shocked to learn that my boyfriend's parents had gotten us our own room, although it was the smallest. We settled down and then I got to go around and meet the boyfriend's family. Unexpectedly, everyone was beyond nice. I kind of felt like I'd be treated like an outsider, given how traditional my boyfriend had said his extended family was. But everyone I met greeted me with a giant hug and a warming smile. I guess the two exceptions were my boyfriend's grandparents. Both seemed very contained and had this very serious look on their faces. As I approached them to introduce myself, they both looked me over a couple of times before moving. And soon they both stood and gave me a very strong-handed handshake and a pat on the shoulder. It wasn't a dream come true, loving welcome, but it was at least a gesture of acceptance. As the night went on, everyone in the house talked, drank, ate, and even had a period where one family member brought a guitar out and we all drunkenly sung covers of popular songs. I had an amazing time, and it was definitely a night I would not forget. I do, however, remember this tense feeling that was with me the entire night. Like something was around me, but I couldn't see. The night flew by, and before long it was some time after 1 a.m, and everyone was ready to go to bed. Before anyone made their way to the room for the night, my boyfriend's grandfather called everyone into the living room for a family meeting. I figured I was a guest, so that included me, but before I was able to grab a seat, several male family members told me I wasn't allowed to be here for this, and that I had to go upstairs. I was kind of disheartened by this, but I made my way up to my room. And to be fair, I wasn't alone, as the Caucasian wife of some other member of the family was also not allowed to sit in on the meeting. I went upstairs, showered, and went to my room to mess around on my phone until my boyfriend came upstairs. While I waited, I got a sudden surge of anxiety. I don't know where it came from, but my heart just started racing and felt like I was about to cry. It lasted for only a minute or so, but it freaked me out big time. After it ended, I sat there confused and slightly shaken. And my boyfriend walked in, and seeing him settled me down. I didn't feel the need to mention it to him, as he definitely would just laugh at me. He showered, and we talked for a bit about the day. We did what a couple tends to do when in bed at night, and then we both went to sleep. That night, I shot up out of my sleep. I wasn't having a nightmare. I wasn't even having a dream. Suddenly, I was awake and vaulted out of bed. And standing there, I was confused as hell as to why my body had jolted itself awake. I thought maybe my boyfriend had kicked the shit out of me or suddenly snatched all the covers. But when I looked down at him, he was calmly snoring, with my side of the covers thrown over him from me vaulting awake. I looked at the clock and it read 4:10 a.m. and I was kind of freaked out by my weird wake-up, but I realized I had to pee, so I threw on my t-shirt and shorts and made a left out of our room to make my way to the bathroom at the end of the hall. After doing my business, I walked out of the bathroom and into the hallway. The bathroom was at the end of the hallway and sat next to a window. I stopped at the window to take in the nighttime scenery. I looked at the moon casting light over the family's parked cars, but what stole my attention away from the cars was a figure moving among the crowd of vehicles. I couldn't tell what it was, but I just watched as it walked up and down the rows of cars. I figured it was someone maybe looking for their car in the darkness of the night, but as my eyes adjusted, the figure clearly wasn't walking like a person. It looked like a black dog or wolf or something four-legged. We were in a heavily wooded area, so I figured it wasn't abnormal for wildlife to wander close to a house. But then the figure stood up. It didn't stand, wobbled around, then planted its front legs on the ground. It stood and continued moving through the rows of cars. I watched as the thing walked with a stiff gait around the vehicles before it stopped to face the house. And the darkness seemed to coat the creature as I couldn't make out any of its features other than its outline. And then it simply looked up at me. Not in the sky or up at a house, but at me. I couldn't see its face, but I knew it was looking directly at me. And from its dark form, I saw two small white dots on its head. Just two pinpoint-like dots that stared at me from outside. I don't know how long we stared at each other, but what I do know is that before I knew it, I was walking downstairs into the front door. I just moved. No reason or want to be, but my body was suddenly in motion. And as I unlocked the front door, an iron-like hand grabbed my wrist so hard it hurt. I looked over and saw my boyfriend's granddad standing there, staring at me, and with a look that I'll never forget. He didn't say anything. He just relocked the door and turned me to face him. I saw him place something against the door before he pulled out something from his pocket, and with a light, he lit it and circled it around my head, saying something under his breath. I remember being utterly confused but completely submissive to whatever was going on. And as he finished, he used his fingers to point out whatever he lit and told me to go back upstairs. Slowly I moved back towards the stairs, but as I turned around I saw him pick up what I realized was a shotgun from off the doorframe. I walked upstairs and stopped before entering my room. I looked to the window and didn't even have to walk over to it to know that thing was still out there. I laid back down in bed, and after about 30 minutes of ceiling watching, I was back to sleep. I was easily the worst sleep I've ever gotten. I had what felt like 24 hours worth of nightmares. It was just me running from something. I was running in slow motion and could hear something fast running after me. Right as I heard it get to me, the dream would restart. I woke up later that morning around 10 a.m. or so and saw my boyfriend was covered in sweat as he slept. He never sweated while he slept, and the room was cool, at 64 degrees, so I found it quite disturbing. I literally had to shake him for about 5 minutes before he woke up, and at first he just dreamily stared straight ahead before he registered that I was looking over at him. I can honestly tell you that my boyfriend is a part of our college's ROTC program, and he is used to waking up early. 99% of the time, he would wake up 2 hours before me when he slept over. Not to mention, in the rare cases that he did sleep longer than me, he would snap awake whenever I touched him. He lazily got dressed before we both went downstairs to find the entire house in a dreamlike state. Everyone moved through the house like zombies, and everyone seemed half dead. Before anyone worked on breakfast, my boyfriend's grandfather called for another family meeting. I was still not allowed to listen, but this one lasted much longer than the last. When it was over, my boyfriend and his parents told me that we were packing up and we were leaving. I couldn't argue as everyone in the house simultaneously moved to their rooms to pack up their items. And within an hour, everyone had packed up and placed their belongings in their cars. As we drove away from the massive cabin, I couldn't help but feel like those same small white eyes were watching us from just out of sight. During a ride home with my boyfriend, the car was quiet. When we stopped to get gas, I tried to ask my boyfriend why he had left, but he just looked at me and said it was hard to explain. Even after they dropped me back off at my campus apartment, I wondered if the reason the trip had been cancelled was because of the figure I had seen that night, as well as the dreamlike state everyone had woken up in. Up until we broke up, I would ask my ex why the trip had been cancelled, and he never really gave a direct answer. He'd just say that I wouldn't understand or that it was a family dispute. It wasn't until after we broke up that I saw a documentary on Skinwalkers. It made me shudder to think what would have happened if I had opened that door and walked outside. Wow. Short but certainly interesting and nerve-wracking story there from SirDimmaDome over on Reddit No Sleep. Big thank you, sir, for allowing me to narrate this short but incredible story on the show, and I really do look forward to more of your work in the future and hope you enjoyed my rendition. Well, guys and girls, you know the drill from here. Please do let us know what you thought down below in the comments box. Please do like and share. It really does help with the channel and our community further. And why not hashtag TeamFEAR and DMT's Cryptid crew. If you're an aspiring writer or would just like to have a crack at things, then why not get in touch with me with the brand new contact email, which is, as on screen, contactthedeadone@gmail.com. I really look forward to hearing from you. I hope everybody's having a fantastic start to the week, getting stuck in and taking a fight back to life. reaching for greatness and settling for nothing less. But above all, guys, remember, be safe, not sorry.